Welcome to Masters of Product Management, powered by Sequent Learning Networks, a show that provides extraordinary insights for product managers who want to go faster and farther in their product management careers.
Hello, this is JJ Rory, Vice President at Sequent Learning Networks. In our Masters of Product Management podcast, we tap into the experiences of people who work in and around product management to help you learn and grow in your product management career. When I first got into product management, I felt a bit out of place because I didn't come from a technical background. I had a degree in business management, which, by the way, is what I finally ended up on after trying about 20 different majors in college. I did have some fun. And some of my early roles were traditional marketing and sales types of positions. So when I ended up in my first product manager role, I was afraid my lack of technical knowledge would hold me back. It took me a long time to realize that, a certain level of acumen in technology and many other subjects is important. You don't have to be an engineer to be a product manager. Some great product managers do happen to be engineers by trade, but many great ones are not. There are some other things that matter just as much, if not more, like business acumen, market awareness, and some soft skills like curiosity, communication, empathy, to name a few. The same can also be said about entrepreneurs. There is not one mold from which product managers or great entrepreneurs come. I couldn't be more excited about my guest today, here to talk about how you can create a startup or a product without being a tech whiz. Tara Reid is the CEO and founder of a $1 million tech startup called Apps Without Code. After running marketing initiatives at Google, Foursquare, and Microsoft, Tara branched out to launch her own startups using unconventional techniques. Her online school has trained over 70,000 entrepreneurs across 14 countries, teaches people how to build their own apps, validate their business ideas, and build revenue-generating businesses. She's a TEDx speaker, Forbes 30 Under 30 entrepreneur, past participant of 500 Startups Accelerator, and an alumnus of Columbia University. Tara, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
So Apps Without Code is such a fascinating business to me. I just love it. Tell me what inspired you to start your business.
Yeah. So I started Apps Without Code really on accident. I had been running another startup prior to Apps Without Code. It was called Collecto. And Collecto was an app that helped people find artwork for their homes. And we ended up building an algorithm that matched people to artwork based on their taste. And I built Collecto without writing any code. And I've been blogging about what my journey was building products as a non-technical entrepreneur, as someone who didn't know how to code, what my process had been and what my journey was finding the right tools to build with and building with them. And I had a bunch of people asking me from my blog, hey, I have an idea too. Can you teach me? I then did a TEDx talk, as you mentioned, on building Apps Without Code. And I just had so many people in my email inbox that I decided, okay, I have to help some of these folks. And so I decided to help people. I helped 5 people build their app, validate their idea without code, and put it out into the world. And then I opened up enrollment again, and I had 70 people, and it turned into this whole thing where I now teach as a whole business now, Apps Without Code, teach people how to build their own apps and how to validate them. But that's where it came from. It came from me launching my own startup, building that startup without code, and then sharing on my blog and on talks what I was doing.
That's really, really interesting. So you kind of accidentally came upon this market need.
Yeah,
you knew you needed
absolutely.
it for yourself, but you didn't realize that so many other people would need it. I love that. That's such an interesting. Yeah. And it's funny because a lot of times products end up like that. Products are built for internal purposes and then they get exposed, or like you, an entrepreneur will be doing something and then find a need that they didn't even really realize was there. So it's fascinating.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So tell me some things that you think entrepreneurs need to know if they want to create a business, or specifically maybe around an app idea.
Yeah. I think that one of the biggest gaps that I find with entrepreneurs, first of all, is figuring out who it's for. And I think a lot of times, like, we know that we want to be specific. A lot of us in the industry know that you want to be specific and be really targeted. But I think that this is a really hard thing for people to do. They look at their favorite products. They look at Facebook, they look at Uber, they look at Airbnb, and they're like, wow, everybody uses this. Anyone can use this app. But I think getting really, really specific on who your target customer is, like I think a lot of people miss that. So that's one of the really important things. It makes your whole life easier. It makes the product easier. It makes the marketing easier. It makes everything easier when you're really, really specific and you choose a really narrow target, right? With Facebook, we forget sometimes that when Facebook launched, it was literally just for Harvard students, right? There were maybe like 4,000 people total who could use it. And so getting really, really specific about who your product's for, I think is one of the things that people should be thinking about when they're launching.
That's great advice.
Another thing that I think people should know and be thinking about is what sorts of tools are there at their disposal for them to be creating. So I know a lot of times people, particularly people who don't code or are non-technical, we make all sorts of assumptions about what is and what is not possible for us to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there's a specific mindset that you have to turn on, either as a product manager or as an entrepreneur or both, to assume, and this is the mindset that I take on, assume that everything is possible with your general skill set. You just haven't figured out a way to do it yet. For me, that's been finding tools and really trying to like push the limits of what I can do without code. And these days, there's like all kinds of things. Facebook put out a product called Spark AR to allow you to do augmented reality apps without code. Like there's so much now, so many tools for non-technical folks. So it's about what tools do you have at your disposal, how much research have you done on those, and what assumptions are you making that are really limiting yourself about what you can and can't do.
Yeah, that's really important. I want to dig a little bit. I love what you said about mindset. One of the things that I do when I'm trying to coach or mentor a product manager is I try to work on their mindset as much as their skill set. And one of the things I try to have them do is think of themselves as entrepreneurs, and the products that they own as basically their own startup business, right? Most of them work in a large organization and don't truly own the product and the organization. But I want their mindset to be that, right? That they own it, that they're responsible for it, that it's their baby. They should own all things that product. In that vein, what advice do you give to your entrepreneur clients that might translate to someone who is a product manager in a larger organization?
Yeah, and your question is like, what advice would I give when it comes to thinking about the product as your own?
Yeah, exactly. Like what advice, again, because your clients, for the most part, it truly is their own, right? That their product is their startup, right? And so I loved that mindset of having someone, let's say, that works at a product manager, works at Facebook, just to use that example. They obviously don't own Facebook, but I want them to think about owning their product, whatever little piece of Facebook that is. I want them to think of that product as their startup and be an entrepreneurial type of person. And so I'd love for you to share with some product managers that are out there listening today, what are some entrepreneurial traits that they could embody to help them as a product manager?
Yeah. So I think that one of the things, and this kind of stems back to my career in tech, because I haven't always been an entrepreneur. Before I was an entrepreneur, I was working in product marketing management roles at Google, Foursquare, and Microsoft. So I totally understand what it looks like when you have ideas for a product, but there's different hoops that you need to jump through in order to actually get those implemented, or folks that you need to bring on board. For me, It's always been, and this is true for entrepreneurs individually, or if you work at a company, about gathering the data and the insights that you need to support the kinds of decisions you want to make in the product. Like I had so many, now I can do it a little bit more easily as an entrepreneur because I can go talk to customers, go survey customers, go get information from customers and sort of paint a picture about why we should go this direction or this direction with the product. But I think that you're also able to do that in a larger company setting. And so it really comes down to figuring out the best ways to get that information. And I want to encourage folks to be scrappy about this. I'm thinking about the time when I worked at Foursquare. And when I joined Foursquare, Foursquare was just figuring out how to monetize with small businesses. And there, if folks aren't familiar, Foursquare is and was a check-in app. So you would check in at different locations and really pioneered the concept of checking in a business. And so when you check in at your favorite pizza parlor, right? The Foursquare was figuring out at the time how to monetize that partnership with the pizza parlor, for example. So one of the things we wanted to do was we were trying to figure out how to best create product features for these small businesses. And one of the things that I did was, instead of us having like a fully funded research project or those sorts of things that we didn't quite have buy-in for yet, I literally put together something interesting. We did a street team and we put it together. We went on TaskRabbit.com. I don't know if you guys are familiar with TaskRabbit, but we found people on TaskRabbit who would go into some of these actual small businesses in the area and in a couple of different areas and talk to businesses and start gathering data. So even without like a big budget, we were finding these really scrappy ways to go collect data and insights and then bring that back, sort through all the insights and make recommendations about what the product should look like accordingly. So I think what I'm saying of all of this is that you always have the ability to do some really scrappy work with talking to customers, even when you feel like you don't have the resources for that big, huge project you want to do.
Yeah, that's such good advice. I love that. Sometimes the product manager at a large organization feels constricted by the bureaucracy, if you will. And I love the idea of kind of being scrappy. Just think of yourself, go get information, even if it's not something formal that you've got a research project or what have you. I love that idea. That's a great story.
Yeah, because you take the informal piece and you use that to then get the buy-in for the formal research piece.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fascinating. Really cool. So what advice do you have for entrepreneurs, people who really want to start their own company? They just don't know how to get started. I can imagine there are a lot of people out there. I myself have been an entrepreneur and started a company myself. I didn't even know how to get started, and I was kind of already established, if you will, as a business person. So what advice do you have for entrepreneurs who want to do something, but they just don't know how to get started with an idea?
Yeah, so I have two pieces of advice depending on what stage you're at. So if you are still trying to come up with an idea, you're not really sure what kind of product or experience you want to create, I think the best thing to do is to ask yourself this series of questions. The first question is, what do you do for work? That's an easy question. You already know the answer to that. Write that down. What do you do for work? The second question is, what is one thing that is hard or time consuming about that job? Like, what's something that you and your boss are just like, oh, we have to do this part. It takes so long, or it's time consuming. It's not fun. Like, what is that one or two things in the company that are hard or time consuming for you to do at work? And the third thing is to brainstorm some ways that you can create a product out of that, where you can take that problem and actually create a solution to it. So those are where I see people create like the best ideas that they have an unfair advantage on. And when I say unfair advantage, I mean that they already know that industry because they work in it. They know a lot more than me or you about that industry. They're specialists in that. And so they are able to create really awesome businesses and app ideas and products around what you do for work. You can also do that activity for your hobby. So the question is, what's one of your favorite hobbies? What's one thing that's hard or time consuming about that hobby? And then third, how can you create a product or solution around that? Those are the questions that I usually work through with people who are developing their ideas. And most of us know like what things are hard and time consuming and what kinds of ideas, and they can brainstorm for coming up with solutions to that. So that's my first piece of advice if you're trying to come up with an idea in the first place. If you already have an idea, I think the next thing to do is to go find people who would be interested as potential customers. So before you build anything, before you mock up anything, it is to go find people. And there's really two great ways to do that. One, you can go to find a Facebook group. I actually did this last week because I'm in the middle of right now on my YouTube channel, on the Apps Without Code YouTube channel, having people watch me go through the process of launching an app idea from scratch. So coming up with the idea, validating it, talking to people, building it, doing my marketing. I'm just doing it live for everyone to watch a couple days a week. And so one of the things that I've been doing is I've been finding Facebook groups with people who are probably my customer and posting in that Facebook group, hey, here's what I'm working on. Anyone interested? Comment below and I'll follow up with you. So finding people that are interested through Facebook groups, or if your customer is a business, going on LinkedIn to find and search tens of thousands, tens of hundreds of thousands of people that would be your ideal target customer and start talking to folks.
Yeah, don't build it and they will come. Right?
No.
That never works. I don't know. I've even tried it myself. Yeah, that's wonderful. Wonderful advice. So I have a slightly different question for you now. You're a CEO of a startup, so I can only imagine how crazy your life is. How do you structure your lifestyle around being the CEO of a startup?
Yeah. I'm really intentional about how I structure my life. I work 2 days a week. I work on Mondays and I work on Thursdays. And the rest of the time I spend doing other things, thinking and reading and watching TV and writing and just doing other things that I enjoy. I realized that I have a pretty unconventional life structure for a CEO, but I was intentional that I wanted to create a business that allowed for myself and my team to have flexible lifestyles. For me, the goal was not to get into business and to use business to hustle all the time, but to use business as a tool to create some space and margin in my life.
That's amazing. That's truly amazing. Be intentional, and I think a lot of folks would love to work 2 days a week. But as soon as you said, and then the other days, I'm thinking, I'm writing. You're definitely working, but it's a very interesting lifestyle. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I might not even be thinking or writing about work-related things. I may be working on other projects as well. But yeah, it took a lot of work. It was very hard to
Yeah, I
get
can
to this
imagine.
lifestyle, not because there was like all this work to do, but mainly it was hard. Like I am a recovering workaholic for sure. And so it was hard to pull back and say, like, one of the things we do on our team is we write down the one most important action that we each need to take that week, the one most important thing. And then
I love
after
that.
you've done that one most important thing, I don't care what you do. If you want to go to the beach, you want to take a walk, fine, you're done. And it allows us to, all of us also are like, there's lots of projects we're excited about. So people end up doing more than one thing in practice. But what it does is it anchors you around this one win that you have each week. And then once you've had that, everything else is a nice to have. And so we've structured the culture of the company around that too.
That is so cool. I love that. I think if people could do that, even in some ways, just kind of progress that direction, I think the world would be much better. That's really awesome, especially in these
Yeah.
days when we're recording this, by the way, at late May of 2020. Excuse me, late April of 2020, and it's COVID-19 world, and so everybody's kind of holed up at home. Fingers crossed as much as we can. So very interesting way to structure your lifestyle and your company.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. Thanks for
And I
sharing
think
that.
even if you're in a 9 to 5 job, this is something that you can use with your manager
Mm-hmm.
because it actually really helps align focus and priorities. That if you share with them your one most important action you're doing each week, they can either A, figure out if they're aligned with you on whether or not that's a priority. But
Sure. Yeah.
also you get to show that you are completing the most important things consistently. It's kind of a way to prove that you're being super productive, particularly if you're in a scenario where you're transitioning right now just because of what's going on in the world, from working in a office to working from home now. Like, people are totally rethinking, how do I know if my team and my employees are productive? You put yourself in their shoes, like they're trying to
Mhm.
figure that out. And so that might be something that you want to amp up in this time period in terms of communicating those sorts of most important actions on a weekly basis, because it allows you to show, I'm prioritizing and here's what I'm working on at what time.
Yeah, such great advice. So, any other final words of wisdom or advice?
I would just love to encourage people to be creative. I think, like, for me, most of my career has been about finding the right tools and playing around with things, like approaching product creation, approaching my career and product in general with a creative lens. So, for example, for me, it's been about finding tools, finding the right tools that work best for me. Finding, for example, like some of the tools that we teach in our program. There's a software tool called glideapps.com that we teach, which allows you to take a spreadsheet and turn it into an app. there's a software tool called Bubble that allows you to a lot more freely, you just kind of a blank canvas, create whatever kind of web app without code that you want. You drag, drop, point, click, and then you logically tell the app what to do in English. So like when the user clicks the button, then log them in. Like it literally says that in English. So finding the right tools and playing around with things and bringing that to your team and, hey, I prototyped this out and I used a no code tool. So it's actually fully functioning. How do we bring that over to the engineering team? How do you work ahead of your engineering teams too? Like those are the things I would encourage folks to be playful with, as opposed to coming up with some of these limitations about what they can and cannot do and what's in scope of their role.
This has just been a great discussion. Go follow Tara Reid on Twitter, YouTube, IG. Anything else?
I have a workshop that I do where I walk people through the software tools that I'm using to build products without code. So if folks are interested in that, we can give them the link. And it's also workshop.appswithoutcode.com.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, this has just been amazing. Tara Reid, thank you so much. CEO of Apps Without Code. I follow you. I get a lot of insights from you. I'm so excited to have had this conversation with you today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. And thank you guys for joining us on Masters of Product Management, powered by Sequent Learning Networks. I'm JJ Rory, and I look forward to speaking with you on the next episode.
You've been listening to Masters of Product Management, powered by Sequent Learning Networks. If you'd like to take your career to the next level with additional tools, training, coaching, and books, be sure to visit Sequent Learning Networks at sequentlearning.com.